want to say a quick heads up. I think almost everyone in the room knows, but a quick hands up from each of the INDS staff members. This is Assistant Director Stephen McAlpine, who many of you know from 330. Assistant Director Carrie Sordy, who many of you know from advising. Eric Brown, who is more and more involved in 330 as our class know, and Samira Hussam, who organises us, keeps the wheels on it, and teaches 399. I'm Steve Freeland. It's been a real pleasure to be the director for almost 4 years now. Wow, time has flown. Here's how these things run. Each student gets between 10 and 12 minutes to present. As they hit the 10-minute mark, Samira will start holding up a series of cards, and we encourage Wyatt and each student to just be aware of Samira, make eye contact, and then she won't be trying to press it in your face. Just like, gotcha. So you'll get a warning at 10 minutes that says 2 minutes to go, then 1 minute to go, then 0. When the 0 card appears, if any student is still speaking, we ask them to literally finish their sentence and end there. It's part of what we're trying to teach, even at this late stage, is the expectations of formal presentations. During this, INDS staff will be completing these yellow rubrics. These are things that evolve considerably, although they've been stable for almost 6 months now, which might be a record during the past 4 years. This accounts for 10% of the students' grade in this capstone class. We actually encourage all of you, if you'd like to fill in any comments on the rubric whatsoever. We read them, we take them seriously, but Wyatt's grade for this portion comes from the INDS staff. Lastly, we say a genuine encouragement to all folks to ask questions. We've certainly encouraged our INDS 330 class, but there are no dumb questions here. Part of the job of this capstone is to be accessible to a broad audience. That's one of the challenges for interdisciplinarity. So please ask. And you'll typically find that what felt to you like a very self-conscious question is a really good one that leads to a deep conversation. So I think that's the end of my crib notes on all things I say as director. I'd like to say a huge welcome to Wyatt, but even before he does so, thank you ever so much to Mentor for being here. We appreciate all of your voluntary time that goes into making each and every one of our students a success. Thank you very much. Over to you, Wyatt.
Good morning, guys. My name is Wyatt Griffith. As you all know, I'm an INDS major with a focus in criminal justice. And today I'm going to be presenting to you all my capstone, which is the impact community policing has on citizen perception of public safety and police work. However, before I begin my presentation, I want to make a few acknowledgments. First, I would like to say thank you to my INDS advisor, Professor Steve McAlpine. We've been together since spring semester of my freshman year. So, and he's been extremely supportive throughout the entire time. It's been a long run, but a great run. I would also give a big thanks to both of my faculty mentors, Dr. William Blake from Political Science and Dr. Sarah Archibald from Sociology. Over the past year, they've been very helpful in writing my capstone and reviewing it for me, and I can't thank them enough. I would also like to give thanks to my INDS 480 professor. She's not here today, but Dr. Tabasa Majid, she helped me tremendously in the development of my research question and just brought clarity to the whole capstone project as a whole. And last but not least, I want to give a big thanks to the INDS staff, Dr. Stephen Freeland, Carrie Souter, Eric Brown, and Samira Hassan. You know, all of you guys are a wonderful group and been very supportive and caring throughout my time here, so thank you. To begin, I want to start off with a picture for you guys, and before I go into explaining what I see in this picture, I want you guys to think to yourself, what is this picture portraying? What is the message? So, as someone who plans to pursue a career in law enforcement, what I see is here on the left we have, it seems to be an older photo, black and white, maybe taken in the 50s or 60s, of two police officers kneeling down with this young child. Everyone's smiling. It seems to be conveying an overall message of happiness. Whereas on the right, we have more of a modern day picture depicting the modern day police officer in a rather threatening way. They're heavily armed, and it's just portraying an overall theme, kind of, it's not appealing, negativity. So this kind of leads me to the problem. Over the past decade or so, I've noticed that a lot of attention has been brought towards law enforcement, specifically police. And a lot of this attention has been negative attention, mainly conveyed through police brutality incidents, movements like the Black Lives Matter movement. And before I move on though, I want to make it crystal clear that I'm by no means trying to offend anybody or try to justify what the police has done in these police brutality incidents over the past few years. However, what I am trying to highlight is that I believe that this attention towards police has inadvertently stigmatized police as a whole across the nation and has caused perception of police to be affected in a negative way. So that leads me to my objective and research goals going into this project. I went into this research trying to find a solution to solve this tension between society and police, and I wanted to do that through community policing. So my research question was, how does community policing impact citizen perception of public safety and police work? And for those of you who don't know what community policing is, it's simply a style of policing that kind of diminishes the old school hierarchical system where police is above everybody else, brings them down to the same level as the community which they serve, and promotes collaboration between the two to work together to solve community-oriented problems. So moving forward to my disciplines, within this project I use the disciplines of sociology, psychology, political science, and management. I use key elements within each discipline such as broken windows theory, George Meade's labeling theory. Within psychology I use bystander effect. In political science I used a landmark case, Floyd versus City of New York, the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act of 1994, and management. The first three disciplines, I basically use them to explain the development of the relationship between police and communities and how it came to be as it is today. And as for management, I will explain that later on in the presentation when it applies. So moving forward to the methodologies, I did a type 1 capstone, which is a scholarly synthesis. It's research-based. Essentially, you weave together insight from two or more disciplines to create an interdisciplinary narrative. And lastly, it's also practical in the means of time in which I had to complete this project. Within my project, I did a literature review and a research study analysis. Within the literature review, I did research on the previous mentioned disciplines, as well as research towards the current approaches towards community policing. As for my research study analysis, over this past winter break, I conducted a study in Talbot County, Maryland, on community policing through the Talbot County Sheriff's Department, which I will also go into detail later. So, how did I spend my time with this project? 30% of my time, I would say, was put towards conducting research, going through the databases provided by the library, seeing what professionals within each discipline had to say about the topic. An additional 15% of my time was spent towards conducting the actual study back home over winter break. Another 30% was actually put towards writing the actual capstone paper. In the last quarter, 25% of my time was spent editing and reviewing the paper, which I'm still almost done. Going into the lit review, I came across two approaches. First is which were both developed by professionals within the field. First is the camps approach, which was developed by David Bailey, a professor of School of Criminal Justice, State University of New York. And this was mentioned in his book, Future of Policing. The second is the Chicago Alternative Policing Strategy, also known as CAPS. This was developed by the City of Chicago. And within both of these approaches, the creators highlight four of what they call the key elements to successful community policing, given that they were both developed to promote community policing in a way that promotes a positive relationship between the community and the department. So moving forward to my case study, before I go into the details of it, a lot of you are probably wondering, well, why Talbot County? If you've never even heard of Talbot County, it's a county located on the eastern shore of Maryland. It's actually where I'm from. So when I was home over winter break, it was practical and feasible for me to be able to do it in that location. Also, 2 summers ago, I completed a summer internship with the Sheriff's Department there. So during that time, I was able to develop relationships which enabled me to conduct the study with them. And the So as for the survey, it was a 31-question survey that consisted of 5 sections, such as community involvement, like procedural justice, public safety. There was a demographic section, and the overall purpose of the survey was to gain an understanding of how the community, this was distributed to the Talbot County community, was to gain an understanding how the community feels about the department, the Sheriff's Department. I also conducted 6 semi-structured interviews with Sheriff's deputies. The purpose of the interviews was to gain the police perspective on how they perceive the relationship with the community. So some of the overarching, or one of the overarching findings from my study was that a strong community involvement correlates to a high level of trust. Specifically within my research, I found that 83.65% of the participants answered positively in the community involvement section. Questions within the community involvement section involved things like how often do you interact with the Sheriff's Department? Were you satisfied with those interactions? Stuff of that matter. And then in addition to that, 82.29% of the participants showed a significant level of trust for the Talbot County Sheriff's Department. So using that data, I was able to infer that there was a correlation between the community involvement and trust. So continuing on to the SOI section of my paper, I used the 2 bridging strategies of building complex multi-causal explanations, as well as bridging the explanation action gap. And to walk you guys through it, starting with disciplinary insights, I use sociology, psychology, and political science to build a complex multi-causal explanation which explains why the tension exists between police and certain communities. I then use this explanation to help bridge the explanation action gap, which comes in using my management discipline. Using the management discipline, I implemented a policy recommendation into my paper, and within that policy recommendation, I discuss the installation of community policing tactics, which I believe through my results would promote a positive relationship between the community and police, which inadvertently would result in a positive impact on the citizen perception of police. So how does this research relate to the field? Currently, there is a lot of research being done on community policing and the tactics involved. However, there's very limited research on the reasoning behind those tactics. By that I mean that a lot of professors are saying you need to do X, Y, and Z. However, they fail to recognize why X, Y, and Z are needed. That's what makes my approach unique. So, like I said, I use the disciplines to talk about how this problem evolved, and that factors within each discipline were affecting this problem, so they need to be taken into consideration when making these policy recommendations towards community policing. So as for limitations, there was a lot of limitations within this study. First one I'd like to highlight is that unfortunately the study was not generalizable to the Talbot County population. I was only able to get 99 participants out of a sample population of 1,000. It's just kind of the way the dice fell. With that said, I lacked, thank you, Samir. I lacked kind of hard data and hard evidence, so I had to make a lot of inferences. And also the location was a limitation. So Talbot County is a predominantly white area. There's a lack of diversity within the community. So I believe that, and it's a rural area, so I believe that a study within an area like Baltimore City compared to a study in Talbot County would bring more value to the results, and just the overall time frame of the project was a limit itself. So to wrap things up, the Talbot County Sheriff's Office in their own way kind of demonstrated the 4 key elements of success highlighted by the camps and caps approach. And in result, they have a positive relationship with their community, and the citizens view them, have a positive perception of them. So some of the methods that they use, which are similar to the approaches they use from camps and caps, are decentralization of command, promotion of social capital, and community-oriented problem solving. So all of these were managerial approaches that I discussed within my paper that were proven to be effective by the Sheriff's Department, and I believe that local departments across the nation could use to help build their relationship with the community and effective perception. So, thank you.
Questions from the audience?
Yep.
So when you surveyed the community members, how did you go about distributing that survey, and like did you take into account the statistics behind it? And you said you had limitations anyways.
Yeah, so the way I went about it was, unfortunately I didn't have any additional funding to conduct a study, so I used a website called a company called Exact Data to purchase a mailing list, a randomized mailing list within the Talbot County area, and I bought 1,000. It was a list of 1,000 people, and it was emails. So then I created a survey through SurveyMonkey. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with that, but it's a website that lets you develop your own survey. And then I distributed all those emails through SurveyMonkey. It was a randomized list that, and within the Exact Data, they allowed you control for factors like race, religion, sex. So everything was randomized according to the website. So I gotta kind of take their word for it, and that's how I distributed.
Wait, I have a follow-up.
Go for it.
About like how many people actually responded.
So out of the 1,000, I got 99. So it's about a 10% response rate, but according to people that have done studies, that's a fairly good response rate from what I've heard, according to my professor Blake.
We've got time for a couple of other quickish questions. Please go for it.
So did the literature talk about, how do the police departments know that these new techniques, CAPS and CAMP, how do they know that they're effective? What do they?
Well, within the CAMPS approach, he talks about that in his book, Future of Policing, and he doesn't, there's not directly hard evidence. It's not like they're like implemented in present day departments. He talks about, based on his experience within law enforcement agencies, that he would recommend these for future agencies to implement, which he would believe would bond the relationship. But as for the CAPS approach, that was installed by the city of Chicago to help bridge the relationship between the community and the police departments, because they noticed that there was a significant gap between the two, and within that approach there was signs of what's the word I'm looking for? Just it was working. Improvement, yeah.
So if I could follow on to that, I'm wondering, and when I was thinking about what did your project do, or maybe next steps, do you see space for maybe more structured metrics to figure out how do you measure whether or not these things are getting better? I mean, if you were to, let's say you had this suggestion, you instituted, you just run another survey, how would you try to figure out whether or not it was successful?
So for future research, I would suggest that, like I said earlier, I would also recommend doing a variety of locations, so that would amplify the effectiveness in it. But in regards to measurement, maybe I haven't really thought that through, but because I wasn't able to go that far within my study, but maybe upon implementing those strategies, I guess maybe going around community surveying and see how but directly addressing certain approaches and seeing how they respond to it. But that's a good thought for future research.
Well, thank you ever so much. We will get Kayla set up and let's give you more.
Thank you.